Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at another Master Grade, and that's kind of crazy considering it's been two in the last few months. This right here is the Master Grade Sinanju Stein narrative version Mecha. Now I know what a lot of people's questions straight away, would be, it's like, well, which Sinanju is the best Sinanju? As of right now, there are 5 core Sinanju releases when it comes to Master Grades. That's not even including the titanium finish. A lot of them are similar, some are kind of different, so if you want the straight, quick answer of which Sinanju should you buy? Well, the simple answer is if you want the full frontal version of the Sinanju, which was in Unicorn Gundam, the best version as of right now is the OVA version. That's the one that comes inside this box, so the Master Grade Sinanju OVA. However, if you want the Grey Sinanju, which was in Gundam Narrative or Gundam NT, you're going to be wanting this one that we're taking a look at today. That's the simple answer. Those are the two. As for why, I'll get into that a little bit later on, but if you do want any of these kits of your own, this video right here would not have been possible without those absolutely awesome people over at HobbyLink Japan. Now I have to say this kit is absolutely phenomenal. I love it to bits, but it doesn't necessarily do anything new. So in order to talk about that, let's wind back the clock a little bit and get back to the build. When it comes to the build of the Master Grade Sinanju Stein narrative version for Mecha, this one is a little bit of a chimera. This has a bit of pretty much every Sinanju kit that came out in the past included inside of the box. So although you do get tons and tons of plastic inside of this box, a lot of which will be kind of left over at the end, like we would have seen with the last version of Sinanju, which was the Sinanju Stein narrative version, non-Mecha. This does mean there is a lot of runners in the box, and one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit is the fact that Bandai doesn't really standardize putting those little sections inside of the manual that let you know what runners you're working with per body part. So that means I had to kind of write them in manually myself to go get them, so I didn't really have a ton of plastic left on the table. However, in the end that kind of falls apart because you're jumping from runner to runner to runner quite a bit to build this, like I said, chimera. At the heart of this build is the original Sinanju Master Grade kit from all the way back in 2008. That was a phenomenal kit that did have some issues, so that does mean Bandai did release the OVA version, so some of the parts from the OVA version are in this too, which does mean that this kit should not have the breaking peg in its waist. Then on top of that, we've got some of the Master Grade Sinanju Stein. That was the white one, which if I'm not mistaken came out in 2012. The vast majority of the armor that will clip onto this fantastic inner frame is from that particular kit. Then we do have some parts from the 2018 Master Grade Sinanju Stein narrative version. So that would be a lot of the parts of the shield, the arms and the body for the sleeves aspects. And as you can tell by kind of taking a look at this kit, it is extremely similar to that kit that did come out 6 or so years ago. So I guess the most important thing to really talk about when it comes to the build of this is what is new. So first off, I'm going to get out of the way what is old. So all the parts I just mentioned are the way they were before. Building the various aspects of this kit is a ridiculous joy. It is so detailed. Give yourself a lot of time to build this because it is and has been a Master Grade staple for so long, because even with the previous flaws these kits would have had, they've always been so godlike. The amount of layering parts in the legs, the limbs, the arms is incredible. I still remember the first time I did build these aspects. They're still exactly the same, and the reason for that is, well, for the vast majority of the kit, they were perfect. Overall, this kit builds up in the way a perfect Master Grade should. The interior detail is ridiculously over the top and phenomenal. I will mention the waist unit in here is based off of the OVA and the Sinanju Stein, so that does mean it doesn't have the breaking peg, but still be careful with it. Inside of the torso, we still have that absolutely ridiculously cool cockpit that has that kind of psycho frame clear shell. This time around we do have a Zoltan for actually popping inside of that, but everything else builds up the same. You've got the same inner torso section that takes that clear ball with the pilot figure inside of it, and it just is so nice to build up. There's so many moving gimmicks throughout the build. In the sides of the legs we've got moving thrusters, in the rear of the arms we've got some moving opening hatches for the beam sabers. The shoulders on this are a little bit on the simple side, but I did feel that was a bit of a breath of fresh air in such a complex build. The head on this is relatively simple. It does have some eye stickers on it, which, you know, if they're updating the kit for 2024, I do feel they could have color separated to some degree. Minor gripe, but it's a gripe indeed. Once built up though, it does look phenomenal, and even the backpack on this kit just feels so realized. There's so much detail, so many moving parts, but then again, it's been the exact same backpack, for the most part, all the way back to 2012's Sinanju Stein. So all of this stuff we would have seen before, but just in case you didn't, it is absolutely incredible. But what makes this 2024 version of the Sinanju Stein any different to what we would have seen with the last two Steins, especially the narrative version, which it looks almost identical to? Well, not a lot really. Runner S1, S2, T1, and T2. That is it, 4 runners, and 2 of them are really small. As for what that actually means on the model kit itself, first off we've got color swaps. So we've got a color swap on the verniers. They're exactly the same physically, but they just are color swapped on new runners. So that means the verniers and the legs are now in a grey, as opposed to the brown like the inner frame, which they would have been on the previous Sinanju Stein. This is exactly the same around in the backpack. All of the verniers are cast in grey as opposed to brown. That is it. Physically identical otherwise. There's also a little bit of this section right here on the backpack, which is now cast in brown instead of the navy blue. So again, physically identical, different color. Next up, the hands in here are different to the previous Sinanju Stein. These are from 2022, so I assume they're exactly the same as the Master Grade Gundam Mecha. Because there's new hands in this kit, that means some of the new parts on the S runner are new handles for the weapons to make them compatible with the new hands. Next up then, and probably the biggest change from the original Sinanju Stein, is now we do have fully color separated sleeves on this particular kit. So that of course is the sleeves on the arm. These are mainly made out of large white pieces, and the black pieces go on over, and they do look incredible. Same up on the chest. The parts layer up very nicely and look very nice too. We also have the little emblem section that attaches into the shield, so that does mean the associated part for around that emblem and the emblem are new on this kit. Finally, we do have one new weapon, which is the pair of beam axes. These are quite simple, just really 2 parts each, and a bit for connecting them into a combined form. But yeah, that is it for the new parts in this kit, and I'm going to complain a little bit about one aspect. If they can color separate all of these new parts and make new grey verniers for on it, they totally could have color separated the eyes too. The old sticker eyes is a little bit on the side. And speaking of stickers, we do have some stickers down on the legs too. After all that color separating, they really could have done this little bit as well. These are some kind of maroonish red stickers that go around the verniers on the sides of the legs, and these are anything but premium. So much work put into a lot of places. With this is definitely a bit of a letdown. But anyway, on the whole though, an absolutely phenomenal kit. And as for what the kit looks like finished, I guess it's about time to check out the aesthetics. So when it does come to the looks of the Master Grade Sinanju Stein narrative version Mecha, what can I say? This looks absolutely drop dead gorgeous. There really is just something about the Sinanju. It's big, the angles are perfect, it just looks phenomenal. It is a legendary Master Grade for a reason. I don't even have to try to get good footage of this. It always looks incredible. There's some kits out there that you have to play with the light a lot just to make it look nice. This catches the light perfectly from every angle. The combinations of colors on it are just kind of perfect. It just really does work out. Overall impression? It is astounding. Although, astounding in a way we've kind of seen before. So yeah, the Master Grade Sinanju Stein right here is an absolute unit of a kit. It is huge. It just looks so perfect. Now, I've done next to nothing to it. I've pen lined a little bit, just a little bit on the head and the shoulders just to kind of, you know, kind of make the overall thumbnail area look a little bit like more complete. But for the most part, everything else is just as it is out of box. It is absolutely astounding looking. Now, the big question always is, how different is it from the one that's pretty much already like it, which is this one right here, and they are essentially identical in most ways. Now, I did paint the sleeves, bits on this particular kit. If you want to check out the review of that, you can. This was back in 2018, I think. I painted it with Warhammer paint. It didn't really work out the way I thought. I didn't top coat it, but still, it's not too bad. It's held up relatively well after all of that time. And this went through a move and wasn't really stored that well. But is there really much making them all that different? Well, we'll come back to that in a second. Let's run through the list on this guy first. So jumping into the full 360 spin so you can see every angle of this for yourself. And like I mentioned, this catches the light so perfectly, like an absolutely master cut diamond. This is such an incredible design. If it's better or worse than the original Sinanju design, the red one, that is down to your own tastes. I think they're equally as beautiful. And actually, I'm just going to interject ever so slightly into this little bit right here. This one little paragraph inside of the interview with Katoki in the manual. Back to the spinning. But yeah, basically what that said is it would be nice to see some more sleeves kits done with this color separation. And he does mention the standard version of the Sinanju with the gold. So we may or may not see that happen in future. I really hope that we do. And when he says more sleeves units, I would love to see a Master Grade Rose and Zulu. But hey, this kit right here, gorgeous, beautiful. Let's jump in a little bit closer. So slapping it down beside the art real quick just to kind of look at it side by side, and from what I can see, the vast majority of every color is there, besides a little bit of red for around those fuel tanks around back. Now this could be on the sheet of decals, but besides that, everything is there and it is picture perfect. Now I'm going to throw up the original Sinanju Stein beside it because this is the actual Katoki style. The other one is more stylized for the anime compared to this one. So as you can see, it looks absolutely 100% perfect. So yeah, just whipping out the decals real quick, and it does seem like those particular red ones for around the fuel tanks aren't there. Now, these I didn't get a chance to put on, mainly for the main reason that if I ever put them on before a review, I can end up knocking them off, even if I do top coat the kit. So hopefully in future I'll get the time to pop these on, and I might do an update video. That and for the narrative as well. So when it does come to the color separation on this kit, it is absolutely fantastic. For the most part, absolutely everything is color separated. We've got a couple of little bits on the arms popping through from the under armor, some on the knees, which is nice too. Of course, the sleeves are fully color separated in this kit, which does look astounding. We do have some nice color separation in the verniers around in the backpack with the red sections inside of them. And of course, the only real super letdown here is the fact that the maroony red sections on the sides of the leg thrusters are not color separated, that it's stickers in there. Honestly, I'd be more inclined to leave them off or try to paint them than use these. I did use them just for the sake of the video, but they're reflecty and don't look great. The eyes also are not color separated, they're just stickers, but it doesn't look too bad. And we do have some nice color separated Vulcans and details on the head. When it comes to the usual kind of bad aspects on a model kit like the nub lines, the seam lines, or should I say the nub mark seam lines and mold lines, this really isn't all that bad. Now, this kind of navy blue plastic is a little bit worse off for actually nubbing a little bit, but I only double snip this. If you use something like a glass file or even just a set of different sanding sticks, you can just avoid that by not nipping all the way to the surface. Besides that though, I did feel a couple of things kind of looked like they were a little rough during the build, but once you actually layer it all up, they all get covered. Again, not too bad at all. There is a couple of seam lines down the length of these particular fuel tanks right here, but you can barely even see them. There's just something there, you can kind of see it a bit there. But yeah, there's just something about this kit. It was so expertly designed back in 2012 or whenever it was designed, and everything has just kind of remained perfect, just out of box. It's gorgeous. When it comes to the size, the Sinanju Stein right here is absolutely massive. It comes in at about 23 centimeters, give or take, so about 9 inches. There it is side by side with a standard size Master Grade Gundam, so as you can see, it is absolutely huge. There's a big Gundam being the Master Grade New Gundam Verka, missing the wing, and as you can see, it's about the same size as that, beside the Master Grade Zeta Gundam Verka, Double Zeta Verka, and the Full Mechanics Gundam Aerial. Now, it's probably about time I moved these back because the teetering toe off the edge here. So there's pretty much all three versions of it slapped side by side. There is the OG Sinanju right there, barely holding together. Anything that can break has broken. It is fragile as fuck. There is the OG Sinanju Stein. Just move your arm down a little bit there. Still holding up absolutely perfect. This is the basis for the perfect Sinanju right here. And this is the one we're taking a look at today. I almost totally forgot to put these side by side. There it is side by side with the narrative Gundam Verka itself. Now I will mention this is holding up quite well, but this upper arm rotation here is getting very loose. So I recommend gluing and tightening those while you're building it. This swivel up above the bicep because it does loosen up a lot over time. And finally, there it is side by side with the older version from 2018. So this one right here is the new one. This one right here is the older one that's missing its hand. It's missing the hand because it's attached to the beam rifle. And you could almost well, they're pretty much identical besides a couple of factors. Of course, the most obvious difference between the two of them is the sleeves. Now, I did paint the sleeves over here on the older version, so it's a little bit harder to tell the difference. This is a whole lot brighter than the paint that I did use, but this is actually split in a kind of weird way. There's a seam running down the arm right here that kind of bisects that little bit that you'd really have to close before painting that you do not get on this kit, which looks a good bit nicer. Even though it doesn't look like it's the case, the hands are actually different on both of them as well, ever so slightly. These are some 2020 hands, I'm not necessarily sure on the older one right here, but they are not exactly the same hand, which is why the brand new kit needed new handles on its weaponry. So the next thing that is different, but a very subtle and important change I feel, is the grey on the verniers. This looks like a nice technical mechanical change. These do look like they're a little bit more heavy duty than the brown ones over here that look the same as the inner frame. That is a cool touch. Also, this tiny little piece here has been color swapped to brown on the new version, just to kind of separate things a little bit more. Now the verniers do continue down into the legs, so if you open up, oh wait, that one is grey. So, alright, that's exactly the same. So there was grey verniers in the back of the legs of the older Sinanju. Oh, interesting. Otherwise, these two kits are pretty much mirror images of each other and physically identical, so it's up to yourself whether it's worth upgrading to the newer version. When it comes to the accessories inside the box, we've got a whole load of equipment in here. So that is the bazooka, high beam rifle, shield, beam axes, extra effect parts of the beam axes, grenade launcher, 2 beam sabers, an alternate right hand base adapter, and the 1/100 scale pilot figure. So yeah, a whole bunch of stuff inside of this box. So first up in here, taking a look at the hands. Now these hands are new for 2022. I'm guessing they are off the Zeta Gundam, and they are, strangely enough, even though they are an update, I don't find them particularly much better or more secure than the ones that would have came on the previous versions of the Sinanjus. These right here are still those fully articulated fingers that you can move at pretty much every joint. They can pop out every now and then if you move them too much, and they're not the strongest feeling things, well, of all time. They're more like just to look good than they are for actually holding onto things. Now, we'll mention I did really like the hands that came with the Master Grade Narrative Gundam. I thought something similar might come on this kit, but these are definitely a bit more classic, but still not classic. Strange choice. When it comes to the weapons, first up we have a standard set of beam sabers in yellow. The handles here are generic enough, and they feature this kind of little flip out segment right here to attach it into the hands. When you're attaching these into the hands, you do also have a bit of a flip out segment in the palm of the hand. This can be a little tough to actually get to. This is when it's popped out, and then it's just you pop the peg of the beam saber into the hand, the peg of the hand into the beam saber, and the hold is pretty good. Wrap the fingers around, and this is what you get. Getting the Sinanju Stein narrative version into a pose is simple enough. The articulation is very good. It's not insane, but it does work out quite well, and this is it in a bit of a pose, holding onto the beam saber, looking extremely nice. All the angles, all the bulk really does make this look extremely good, especially in a flying pose. And speaking of which, the stand I used here came included with another Master Grade kit, so the only thing that's actually included in here is the base adapter for attaching it onto it. But I will also note that the wrist on this is not the greatest. It's very limited when it comes to where it can actually move, so your slashing poses are very limited into kind of what angle you can get it into. Extended outward slashing angles aren't really possible here. However, the way these stores is absolutely awesome. In the rear section of the arms, we have this opening gimmick which opens up very seamlessly and nicely. When that's opened up, you just grab your beam saber, pull out the beam, and attach it in there via the tab in the handle. It holds in really good, and it closes up flush. Very nice beam saber storage. So the next close quarters weapons we have in here are the beam axes. These are brand new for this kit. They're extremely simple, just changing the effects. Just pop it off like so. Attach on the longer one just like that. We've seen these all the way back to the Sinanju and the Sazabi. When these are not in use, just pop that off, pull this off, and attach it up a little bit further for the stored state. There are 2 of these included inside of the box, as well as this little aspect here which just looks like this. It's very simple. You pop it in like that, pop the second one onto the end just like so. Actually, that's totally the wrong way around. Pop it on like this, and there you go. You got yourself a big old double-ended beam axe. Basically for rowing its way through space, probably. So while this is in the double-ended glaive mode, you've got two options for attaching it. The first is right in the center here. I will mention this grabby point is in the complete opposite side to what we saw before. So if you do pop it into the hand like this, it's almost in a kind of windmill attack kind of pose. You can just imagine the Sinanju's hand absolutely spinning on its axis to do a big windmill-esque attack. Now that is pretty cool. If you don't want it like that, you can pop it off and just use the same attachment points you use when they're used singularly. Pop it into the hand like so, and you can have it in this kind of double-handed sort of glaive style pose. So this is very simple when it comes to weaponry, but it does work out in a whole bunch of different ways very, very nicely, and you can use the long effects in here too. And that's not all. We'll come back to it later. So next up in here, we've got the bazooka, and man, I've got such, I don't know how to say, memories of this weapon. It is absolutely iconic. Back in the day, this did not come with the standard version of the Sinanju. You get it with every version, I think, since, and you do get it with the OVA version. But way back when, I can remember having to actually buy a magazine or something similar in order to actually get this weapon. Now, this is definitely old school. When we flip on back to the build, it is made out of bunches of pieces that are all the same color. The tech in the actual molding is quite old, so there's a lot of pieces to each aspect of it. But it was just so perfectly, expertly, amazingly designed. There's so many tiny little elements to it. Clear parts for the lenses. Everything builds up so nicely, and we do have a removable magazine too. It is also usable with some of the other weapons, which I'll mention later on, which is one of the coolest aspects of the Sinanju weaponry, which I wish they had expanded on in this box, but they did not. But yeah, this right here is its usual kind of mode. The handle just drops. Whoa. Damn, that's already starting to... That's a bad C-clip. It's already starting to strain. Be very careful with that. You almost have to support it from below while bending it, or it would, doesn't feel great. That's a new handle, by the way. Besides that, you can pop off this whole apparatus up top, which I assume is for targeting, which means that this can be shortened and extended. In the back, we also have this locking mechanism for, well, it doesn't work that great. This is the part that's meant to come out. This part was meant to stay connected to the weapon. But yeah, that's meant to be a little bit of a sliding mechanism there, but it can pop out quite easily. Again, it's definitely coming on in years a little bit. But yeah, anyway, attaching into the hand isn't the greatest fun around. You just do the same thing you did before, where you pop out the pegs in both, attach them into each other. This is one anemic handle right here. I don't know what they made this plastic out of for this brand new handle, but it is weak. Anyway, popped up in the shoulder, you can grab the other handle with the other hand. It's a little awkward enough to line up, but in the end, this is what it looks like. Back in the day, I remember this just being so cool, but it has aged a little bit funnily. But I will mention, I don't think many people are going to use the bazooka like this, because there's cooler ways of using it, which we'll come back to later. When the bazooka is not in use, you just remove the targeting array off the top, and then around back we've got this nice opening but incredibly awkward attachment point for attaching it onto. The top slides out, the bottom moves down, then you have to actually get a bit of a peg into a hole, which actually is the locking mechanism, and then move it upwards for it to lock in. It's quite hard to do. I do recommend removing the backpack in order to do it, but once it is attached, it holds on incredibly well, even though it doesn't look like it's holding on at all. It's bizarre, but it works. I'll also mention the way it folds up is so satisfying. This little bit just closes like so, and then it just moves on down until it is gone. So satisfying. So the next weapon that we have in here is the high beam rifle, probably the chubbiest Gundam rifle that's out there, and by Gundam I mean from the Gundam universes. This is incredible. Now you do have a choice here, I will mention. You can build either the standard Sinanju rifle or the high beam rifle. Now the first assembly part right here is pretty much the same. Zooming back in time a little bit, this all builds up very simply. It's a nice little build. Again, it is old school when it comes to the Sinanju rifle aspect. It is extremely nice. Back to right now, I will mention the scope for this is included. This is it right here. It is very nice, but if you're building the high beam rifle, you will not be using this, which I did. So back in time we go. You just take the standard Sinanju rifle, and then you start building on the extra parts around the outside. This really does feel like they took this Sinanju's rifle and upgraded it to the point where it's like extremely more powerful. Except, honestly, it is the other way around, isn't it? Because the Sinanju Stein came first. I guess Full Frontal just stripped it down to its elements to have a lighter, more stripped back version of that beam rifle. But when all is said and done, it is pretty simple, a big chunky weapon. It's slightly different to the standard Sinanju Stein one because we do have the actual beam rifle's muzzle coming out of it like so. The handle is completely different to the other one, so you can't hold this with the posable hand. Instead, what we're getting here is a pre-posed hand for holding onto it, which I prefer personally. This just works like a standard sandwich high-grade hand. You just separate it like so. You've got a peg for attaching this on, so it holds on like that. And then you sandwich on the other half, and that is nice and simple. And that is a very, very nice hold. So you just swap the hands via ball joint, pop it out like so. It's nice actually having plastic here, not having to worry about scraping any paint. So it just pops on like that, holds on very nicely, lines up with the shape of the arm very well. And overall, it holds on to it very, very good. And so far, so great. So there it is with that weapon, looking absolutely incredible. I love the fact that it matches the color scheme of the mobile suit itself, but I will mention, if this is, which it is, the same as the other Sinanjus which are out there, I've found all the Steins, the standard Stein, the narrative Stein, so far, have loosened up over time, to the point where holding onto the weapons is a little bit awkward. So these are the sort of kits I don't really recommend moving around a lot when you do have it, or you will have to disassemble it later on and tighten everything up. I say, choose what pose you want it in, pop it in that pose, otherwise it's going to start getting a little bit on the floppy side. Next up in here we have the shield. Now this is the only thing that's kind of semi-new besides those beam axes. Everything around here we would have seen on the Sinanju Stein before. The only thing that is new is this new color separated aspect right here. This is so much better than the decal. I love this. This is really, really nice. Otherwise, same as what we saw before, with a lot of stuff you can do round back, which is something I'm holding off on because it is the best aspect of all of the Sinanjus. I am assuming Sinanjus is the plural of Sinanju. Anyway, there we go. Shield pops onto the back like this. I suppose you do get a little bit of articulation on it too, because this whole segment can move. If you want it to be floppy and maybe break your kit, don't do that. So now that we've got the Sinanju Stein loaded up with what is essentially its general kind of loadout, we can actually get into some of the coolest stuff about this. And I'm going to be bringing back some of the weapons, including the beam axes, the bazooka, and bringing in something we haven't taken a look at just yet, which is the grenade launcher. This can crack open in the middle like so, which is always cool. Also has a little bit of a trigger down here, which is also an interesting detail. But yeah, all the Sinanjus can do this, but it's always so awesome. Attaching this just involves popping it down here like so, and then it swings up under here, clicking in at 2 different points. Now adding some absolutely gorgeous mass to the beam rifle. It's subtle, but really, really nice. I'm going to assume that the Sinanju doesn't actually have to reach forward and pull this trigger, but yeah, that's cool. If grenades are not enough firepower for you, you can just pop this off in exactly the same way you took it, well, put it on. Then you can take the bazooka, and it's so many years after, and I still love this. You just collapse it down like so, and do the exact same thing. This weapon system is ridiculously cool. So that just pops in like so, closes on up like that, and there you go. Now, of course, the Sinanju is going to have a little bit of issue with this weapon. If you kind of put it in the right pose, it will hold it up, but it might sag down over time. I guess this is for using in space, not under gravity, so its soul's being weighed down by gravity right here. But yeah, it's going to have a little bit of an issue with this, so it might be worth having an extra stand just to help support that right there. But just look at how ridiculously cool that is. A full-on bazooka with its full magazine of rounds just underslung underneath the rifle. So cool. Now, it's a little bit sad. I would have liked to have seen more things working with this weapon system. I don't know, a little minigun, a blade, bayonet kind of thing, some kind of something else for underneath. I know that wasn't featured in Narrative Gundam, anything like that, but it just would have been cool to see more use of this cool system, or at least the system used in more mobile suits. Anyway, the shield can do it too. Now, I did mention earlier on that the underside of this shield is the same as before. It is not, because we do have this little cool storage part right here for this brand new weapon piece. And this is now able to work with the new weapons that are included. As for the older one we would have seen before, the grenade launcher can pop in under here, so you can have that like so. Sadly, you can't pop in the bazooka in here too, because that would have been pretty cool, but still very, very nice. And down here we also do have attachment points for attaching on the beam axes just like so. So there is one and there is the other. So we've got this pair of beam axes attached onto the bottom, adding some offensive capabilities to the defensive equipment. Both sets of beam effects can be used here, so you can pop off the small ones, then pop on the big ones in that typical kind of Sasbi style way. There's one, and there is the other, seems these actually have to be shifted down to this point, just like that, and like that, and there we go. There they are, lined up to cause some major havoc. That's cool. When these are not in use, just pop off the beams, just like so. Pop these off, and these can then be stored in here and on here as well, out of the way, giving the shield a nice pair of points up top, a pair of ears even. That's cool. So at this point I was kind of curious as to how the Sinanju would perform with everything on it. I thought maybe the bazooka on the beam rifle was kind of giving it a little bit of too much weight to one side, so maybe the shield fully loaded might counterbalance it a bit, and it did. The only thing is the stand was having a little bit of issues with it, and also the ab crunch will always fall to the front with all these weapons attached, especially if the weapons are loaded out towards the front. In the end, it did kind of work out, but I had to, lower the stand nearly all the way to the ground so it can actually use its feet for support like a tripod, but overall it does kind of work. In the end though, the wrist kind of gave up a little bit, and there's a little bit of a droop to it, and something like this isn't going to get much better over time, but maybe if you paint it or just tighten the joints, it may be able to deal with all of this stuff. But overall, decent performance considering just how much stuff is in here. So finally now onto the articulation, and when it comes to the fresh build on this, it is rock solid, but I do know that over time it does loosen a little, and let's find out. This one right here was built in 2018, which is what, 6 years ago now? So this one actually is holding up pretty fine, but I haven't moved this one right. The legs are slipping no, that's the butt skirts. No, actually holding up good. This one right here would have been built in maybe 2012, so about 13 years ago. And I'm shaking this now, and the legs definitely swing back and forth a bit at the hips, but otherwise, besides that, there's nothing too bad. It jangles and jingles a bit, but otherwise it's still solid, so yeah, holds up really damn well. But anyway, let's check out just how it poses. So the articulation in general on this is really, really good. I did have a couple of bits shoot off, especially the front skirting armors. The leg articulation is actually better than what the front skirts kind of give it the ability to do, so knocking them off can happen quite often. An arm did fall off. This can happen from swiveling them a lot, but besides that, this can do so much articulation. Actually, everything is fantastic. The only place it's really limited a bit is there isn't much of an ab crunch, which is normal for an older style kit, and the side-to-side pivot at the feet could be a little bit better. But overall, this is a kit that should spend all of its time in the air or in space, so what it can do on the ground really isn't all that important. But as for the full articulation, I'm not going to go through that all today because it's the same kit at its core that it always has been. So if you want to see more about that, I did do a review of the Stein and the Stein Art version. You can check out the full articulation there. It is very, very good. Again, some minor limitations, but nothing too bad. You'll get some great poses out of it, but sometimes it does feel a little bit like you're getting the same pose out of it over and over and over again. But still, great build, nice movement, really cool. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and now when I reviewed the last two Master Grade Sinanju Steins, I gave them gold tier if I'm not mistaken, but back then I think there was only gold tier. There may have been Gundarium, but there was no platinum. There was no that extra space in there between very good and fantastic, and that's what this is. It's between very good and fantastic, making this a platinum tier kit, which is quite impressive considering at its core, this is an older kit. But yeah, as for the list, aesthetically this is absolutely fantastic looking. This is straight built out of box, and they've finally perfected the Sinanju Stein with the sleeves and everything. It looks good from so many perspectives, the angles look great, and it's just so photogenic. The only real down points are a couple of stickers that's on the eyes and on the legs. When it comes to the accessories in here, you've got an absolute armory. A lot of this is older stuff yet again, but it all holds up incredibly well. The only real issue I would have had was a handle on the bazooka, but in all honesty, nobody's going to be holding the bazooka like that. They're going to be using it in the cool way, underslung under the beam rifle. The new weapons in here are okay. They're a new take on an older idea, but they are very simple, but that simplicity works. Finally then, when it does come to the articulation and build on this, it's strong. As I've seen from my older Sinanju Steins, they hold up immaculately, and this will too. The hands can be a little bit touch and go, but they're more go than they are touch, if that makes any sense. I don't know which is the good one. They're good. For these kind of posable hands, they're not too bad, and you do have a pre-posed hand for using with the beam rifle. So overall, once you get it into a pose, it poses up very, very well, and it will hold that pose unless under extreme weights. But yeah, definitely an absolutely fantastic Master Grade. I enjoyed building it, it is awesome, and I think you will like one too. Anyway, as usual, this video right here would have been sponsored by those awesome people over at Hobby Link Japan. Link is down there in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I will see you next time. As always, I can't finish this video without special thanks to those who support the channel on the memberships as well as over on Patreon, including Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Joe, Orgy59061, Shadowwolf179, 10 Soldier YT, and Van Fawn.